Hola y bienvenidos a Elemental Codes Language School. Me llamo José y esta es lección 2. Y vamos a hablar sobre los números. Los números y los números 0 a 1000 millones. Y también vamos a hablar sobre el vocabulario de matemáticas. Ok, si te gusta esta lección o quieres encontrar otras lecciones, puedes encontrarlas en el sitio de web que es www.elementalcodes.com. All right, so hello and welcome. This is Elemental Codes Language School. My name is Joseph, and this is lesson 2. We're going to talk about numbers 0 to 8. Literally, it means 1,000 millions, but it's like a billion. All right. And so we're going to go over numbers, and we're also going to talk about mathematic vocabulary. All right, so first we're going to do 0 to 10, which many people, if you have any Spanish knowledge at all, you should probably know. I mean, it's one of the basic things that's taught in school if you took Spanish in school or in any language at all, is to how to count to 10. Then we're going to talk about mathematics, just like the vocabulary of the basic math, not every mathematical term or anything like that, just the basics. And we're going to talk about numbers 11 through 1000, and then we're going to go 1001 to 1 billion. All right. And then at the end, we'll have a quiz. And the first time, I'm going to go through the entire thing, and I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible. And then I will break up the video into each individual lesson so that it's not as long. And so if you need to learn or you need to work on some particular lesson, you can go ahead and do that. And my goal now is to try to get at least some videos done during this months during these winter months where it's really cold outside. Like today it's 28 degrees, so I'm trying to get as many videos as I can done. There's also some other projects I've been working on, trying to get started and been working on it, but during the rest of the year I don't have a whole lot of time, and I'm also working 2 jobs to try to get to where I can be at a place where I can focus mainly on the businesses that I want to start and not the one that I have right at this moment. All right. All right. So here we have numbers, los números 0 a 10, numbers 0 to 10. And originally I just went 1 through 10, but then I'm like, it might be useful to know how to say 0, which 0 in Spanish is cero. Cero. And in Spain, you might hear the C pronounced as a TH sound, like cero, cero. Okay? But that's usually in the middle of Spain, around Madrid. All right? So that's where they usually will pronounce C's in front of I's and E's as the TH sound. All right? So 1 is uno, 2 is dos, 3 is tres, 4 is cuatro, 5 is cinco, 6 is seis, 7 is siete, 8 is ocho, 9 is nueve, and 10 is diez. Diez. Okay, so you got 0 through 10. Cero, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, cinco, seis, siete, ocho, nueve, diez. So right now I'm just basically doing pronouncing these the way that you would in most Central and South American countries. In Spain, you would say cero and then cinco. Cinco. It's like a th sound. So that's the difference between Spain and Central and South America, is pronunciation. And there's different countries that have kind of nuances where they pronounce things differently, or they like aspirate s's, or we'll get into that in a later lesson. We're trying to just get through the basics, but basically if you say it the way that I'm telling you, you will be understood for the most part. All right. All right, so las matemáticas, the math terms. This is how you would say math, okay? And it's the maths, but literally it's math, and that's how you would translate it. So some things are going to be plural in Spanish that are normally singular in English, and some things are going to be singular in Spanish that are normally plural in English, and we'll get into some examples later on, okay? So here we have the English on the left and the Spanish on the right. So the first one is addition, and you can say la adición, or you might hear la suma, which is kind of like the sum, okay? Or the verb sumar. So the thing that you will notice is that there are different ways of saying stuff. I would recommend downloading the Spanish Dictionary app or wordreference.com and trying to look stuff up because it will depend on countries. Some countries will say things differently, but everyone should, for the most part, understand a lot of the terminology that I'm giving to you because it's kind of more of a neutral form, but there are differences depending on the country. So addition, la adición, la suma, or to add is sumar. Okay, subtraction would be la sustracción, or la resta, or to subtract is restar. Okay, restar. Multiplication would be multiplicación. Division would be división. Um, and I have to divide and to multiply down here, so we'll get over that. I'll go over that when I get there. All right, equals could be es igual a, which is literally it is equal to, okay? Or it could be s, which is it is, and it's when you have the sum of something, or you know, the total, if it equals 1 or 0, okay? And then if it's above 1, if it's more than 1, it would be son. Okay, and if you don't know, just use es igual a because you can use that for everything, okay? All right, so plus, like 1 plus 1, they would use the word más. Now you'll see this several different ways. One way will have an accent on it, which means more. It's the word more. And then you'll see it like in certain writings, especially older writings, where it means like but. I want to talk about this, but I can't. Kind of that there's a modern day way to say but in the older versions of some literature, mas is used in place of the modern day word for but, which is pero, okay? So we'll go over that a little bit later too. All right, and then minus, like 2 minus 2, all right, would be menos, or you might even hear resta. Menos, resta. Okay, and don't worry if you don't get this, I'm going to go over it quickly, but I will break it down and we will go over each individual part a little bit slower. All right, so to multiply, or times, like 4 times 4, would be, so to multiply would be multiplicar is to multiply. And then like 4 times 4 would be, you would use so cuatro por cuatro is 4 times 4, but it's also 4 by 4, which is, the car, the vehicle, 4-wheel drive. All right. And then to divide would be dividir. And then dividir is to divide, but divided by, you could say dividido por, or dividido entre, which literally means divided into. Okay. And then to be left or remain, like if you have a remainder, okay, to be left or to remain is quedar. And this verb you will see later on as well. It can mean several different things, which is why a lot of the Google translations don't work very well. They're getting a little bit better, but they don't work very well because there are words that mean multiple different things, and we'll get into that later on. All right. So now we're going to cover los números 11 a 20, los números 11 a 20, which are numbers 11 to 20. All right, and so we start with 11, which is once, once. 12, which is doce, doce. 13, which is trece, trece. 14, which is catorce, catorce. 15, which is quince, quince. 16, which is dieciséis, dieciséis. And if you remember from the first lesson, the vowel with an accent or the syllable with the accent on it is what is stressed in the word. So in this case, seis has the accent, and so it's dieciséis. Okay? So 17 would be diecisiete, diecisiete. Okay? 18 would be dieciocho, dieciocho. 19 would be diecinueve, diecinueve. And then 20 would be veinte, veinte. And maybe you'll notice, I don't know, I'll point it out, but so with 16 through 19, it's literally like a different form of the word for 10, diez. And then an I, which represents the Y, which if you see a Y or an I, in this case, or an E by itself, it means the word and. And so here it is kind of changed into an I. All right, and then you see the word for 6, 7, 8, 9. So it's literally 10 and 6, 10 and 7, 10 and 8, and then 10 and 9. So that's how you get 16 through 19, and some other Romance languages also do the same for most of those as well. And I'm actually going to do a comparison between some of the Romance languages once I get the opportunity to make more videos. That's one of my things that I'm planning on. I'm currently comparing Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese, Romanian, Italian, and French, and kind of like seeing like the similarities between all of these languages. Most people do not include Romanian when they compare Romance languages, and I've only seen one book add Catalan, which I will talk about that in a different video. All right. All right, so here we have numbers 21 through 30. 21 through 30. So 21 is 21, 21. All right, and you'll see the same thing as we kind of saw with 10. This is 20 with it drops the E at the end of 20. It adds the I, which takes the place of the Y, which means and then it adds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 9. All right, so all of these are one word, and the rest of the numbers will follow a similar pattern. We'll get into that a little bit later. But after this slide, I'll show you. It's basically the same. The only one that's different is 20 through 29, which is 21, 21. 22 is 22. 23 is 23. 24 is 24. 25 is 25. 26 is 26. 27 is 27. 28 is 28. 29 is 29, and 30 is 30. 30. And we'll go over, 30 through 100 here in a minute. But basically, 20 through 20, 21 through 29 are all going to be written as one word. And you'll just have to keep in mind there are two that get an accent on the last part because that's what's stressed, 23, or actually three, 22, 23, and then 26 all have an accent on the last number, the vowel on the last number. All right, and so don't worry about like memorizing this right now. I will go over it and we'll break it down in the next video. All right, so here we have 31 through 100, basically. It's an example. This is where everything changes, but after this pattern you will find throughout the rest of the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, etc. All right, and so you will see 31 will be 31, 31, and you want to kind of like blend it together when you say it, like 31. Okay, but if you need to slow it down in the beginning so you can kind of practice, that's not a problem. People will understand what you're saying, but I just want you to be aware that when people who are native will say these numbers, it will be just like basically one word, almost like 21. All right, so it'll be like kind of pronounced as one word, just so you understand. You got to build your brain up to understanding like the kind of like where the pauses are in the words. It's something that if you listen to something that you know what it says in English and you listen to it in Spanish and you listen to it over and over again, you can kind of like you will learn where the pauses are, especially as you recognize words and stuff like that. So that's something that I would recommend if you're wanting to learn um, how to speak the language and also how to understand it when native speakers are speaking really fast. Okay, it takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely something that your brain will adjust to. It may take some time. It might be quicker for some, it might be slower for others. But here we have 31, which is 31. All right, 32, which is 32. 32. 32. 33, which is 33. 33. 33. All right. And then we have 40, which will also follow this pattern where it's y uno, which is and 1, y dos, and 2, y tres, y cuatro, y cinco, y seis, y siete, y ocho, y nueve, y diez. No, no diez. Just I went a little bit far. I was just counting the 10. But you will see this pattern continue through all of these up into 1 billion. All right. So we have 40, which is 40, 41, 42, 43, etc. And then 50, which is 50. 50 is 50. So you can kind of see like the beginning of the words for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. They're slightly changed, but if that's how you can kind of recognize which one is 60 y 70 are ones that are usually confused, and then 40 y 50 are also confused sometimes by beginner speakers. So just so you know, 40 is 40, 50 is 50, kind of to help you differentiate between them. Um, so hopefully that helps. Seis as in 6, 60 is 60, 60. So that it has an S as like the word seis has for 6. Okay, so if that helps you to remember that 60 is 60 and 70 is 70, hopefully. 80, we have ocho, okay. 80 is 80. 90 is 90. And 90 is, nueve is, um, nueve is 9, but it changes form for noventa. Just think of originally November was the ninth month, and then December was the 10th month, September was the 7th, and October was the 8th. So those are kind of like the roots that are used in a way. So I don't know if that would be more confusing or not, but that originally those were the 7th, 8th, ninth, and 10th month, and then January and February, would be the 11th and 12th, and then March was usually the beginning of the year. Okay, and then for 100, now this will get a little bit. 100 itself will be cien, but after 100, like if you go 101, 102, etc., all the way up to wherever 999, it's going to change form, and I think we'll see that in the next slide. Yes, so it's going to change form in the way that it's pronounced, also written. So it's going to add a two to the end, which in Spanish is do. So cien for 100 becomes ciento uno for 101. Ciento uno. So after 100, cien becomes ciento. So you got 101 or 101, depending on what English you use. Sometimes in English you say 101, sometimes you say 101. It just depends on where you're from. All right, I had to look it up because I didn't really think about what I would say when I said 101 or 101. Like I would add an and, but some places they do not add an and. Even in the United States, I don't know why, but it's 101. And sometimes I won't add an and. Depends on how I say it and why I'm saying it. I don't know why. That's weird. But I never really thought about it until I started doing this lesson plan. All right, so 101 would be ciento uno. 200 would be doscientos. Doscientos. So you would see that 200 is more than 100, and so it is plural, doscientos. 200s. All right. 300 would be trescientos. 400 would be cuatrocientos. So basically, you're just tacking on, you know, 2, 3, 4, and then it changes at 500, and then 6, 7 changes a little bit, and then 9 is almost like 90. Okay, so we'll get into that. But 300 would be trescientos, 400 would be cuatrocientos, 500 changes to quinientos. Quinientos. Why? I haven't really looked it up. I just know that it does. But I'm guessing it probably has to do with most of the changes that happen in these languages have to do with pronunciation. So cinco cientos was probably a little bit harder to say, maybe. And so quinientos is a little bit faster. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I'll try to figure it out, and then I might, uh, when I do this slide as a video, I will maybe, if I find anything, I'll let you know what I find. All right. All right. So 600 would be seiscientos. 700 would be setecientos. 800 would be ochocientos. 900 would be novecientos. Novecientos. Okay. And then 1000 is mil. Mil. All right. So those are 100 through 1000. And obviously, we're not going to go through every single number, but we're going to kind of give you an idea as to how to, how to create your own numbers. So what I would recommend is that you write out a number in numeric form, and then you try to say that number based on what you have learned from these slides, and then you kind of can go back and see if what you come up with is correct, or if you haven't come up with it quickly, you can kind of like go through and practice. I would suggest just practicing. It takes a little bit of time, but you can kind of figure it out as you go, and then eventually you'll get to where you can say any number uh, relatively quickly. Okay, so 1001 or 1001, depending on how you would say it, is mil uno. So it's really easy. 1001, mil uno. Okay. 1005 would be mil cinco. Mil cinco, or if you're in Spain, mil cinco, right? Mil cinco, okay? And then 2000 would be dos mil, and then 2050 would be dos mil cincuenta. Cincuenta. Remember, 50 is cincuenta, okay? And if you don't know these, don't worry. We'll go back. We'll go over it. Go slow. I'll make up new numbers so that you can kind of, kind of work on this. It takes work. It takes practice. It takes studying. It takes trying to use the number off the top of your head is the best way. So learning conversation and talking about this stuff is key to really solidifying the language in your brain. All right. So 3,200 would be 3,200. 3,200. Okay. 4,800 would be 4,800. 4,800. 5,500 would be 5,500. 5,500. Okay. 6,006 would be 6,006. 6,006. All right. 9,999 would be 9,999. 9,999. All right. And this is actually the form that you would use for like saying like the date, like the year. Like 1999 would literally be like 1,999. So it'd be 1999. So that's how you would say 1999, in case you're wondering. All right. And 10,000 would be 10,000. 50,000 would be 50,000. And then 100,000 would be 100,000. And the same is true with this, and anything after it will change to ciento. Okay. All right, and then numbers 1001, los números 1001 a 1,000,000. Okay, 1,000,000,000. All right, so we got 1,001 to 1 billion, which we already went over 1001. This is the second part of it. This is the 1 million to 1 billion part. All right, so we have 1 million, which is un millón. Un millón. Okay, notice the accent on the O. Million. Double L's are a Y, kind of like a Y sound, depending on where you're from. That can be pronounced slightly differently. But for the most part, it's kind of like a Y sound. All right. 10 million would be 10 millones. So 1 million is millón, but 10 million or more than 1 million is millones. 10 millones. Okay. 50 million would be 50 millones. Okay. 50 millones. And then 100 million would be 100 millones. 100 millones. All right. 500 million would be 500 millones. 500 millones. And then 1 billion would be 1,000 millones. I'm wondering if it would be 1,000 millón. But I think it's 1,000 millones because it's over 1. So it's 1,000. It's like 1,000 millions, which is a billion. So that is basically your numbers 0 through 1 billion, and you can kind of like go through and create your own numbers and try to figure out how to say it in Spanish and kind of practice. It takes some time, so don't worry about it. My suggestion is that you read books and you read articles and you try to pronounce it. A lot of the times the books and the articles will have the number in the numerical form, and so you can kind of like practice using that. And if you don't remember what it is, kind of like take it, and you can even, I think you can put it into Google Translate, and you can click on the speaker, and I think it'll tell you how to pronounce it. I could be wrong, but I think that's a useful way of learning how to pronounce it. All right. But I would definitely suggest reading books and articles, and I would suggest reading them out loud so that you are pronouncing the words and you're kind of like learning how to pronounce the words, and you're also practicing and you're hearing yourself. You're involving more than one sense that, of your five senses. All right. Get a journal and a notebook. I created this, which is Elemental Codes notebooks, which have a QR code for our website. It also has a website on it, and it has a band, and it has a place where you can hold your pen or pencil. And this one in particular is the one that I'm working on, the English, Spanish, Catalan, Portuguese, Romanian, Italian, French, and then I'm also adding Hebrew because I'm learning Hebrew as well. But this is my notebook that I use, and I, have several notebooks. I would suggest getting notebooks and writing stuff down and saying it as you're writing it down, kind of using more than one sense. All right. You can watch your favorite shows. A lot of times on Netflix, they'll have some of your shows that you like to watch in English, and a lot of times they have it in Spanish because there's a larger Spanish population, but they also have it in other languages if you wanted to learn other languages. But usually what I would do is I will watch a show in English, and then I will watch it, make sure I understand what's being said in English, and then I will watch it in Spanish with English subtitles, and then I'll watch it in English with Spanish subtitles, and then watch it in Spanish with Spanish subtitles, which kind of gives you an idea of the language. However, there are several times where the subtitles will be the exact translation, and the Spanish that's spoken is slightly different because they have to make it try to line up with the way that the mouth is moving, and so they'll have to shorten it sometimes, and so it's not exactly saying the same thing, but it's pretty close for the most part, and you can kind of still learn. If you don't understand what something is, you can always look it up. SpanishDictionary.com, word reference. There's several different things. You can get an actual dictionary, which I have several of, and carry it around with you and kind of look up words that you don't know and make sure that you can practice saying them and you know how to use it in a sentence. A lot of times these, especially Spanish dictionary, will give you a sentence that will, have the word in it and the way that it's used, and if there's any way that it's used that's different from I guess, the general definition of the word, it will give you other ways of, sometimes good, sometimes bad, of using it in a sentence to mean something completely different than what it normally means. All right, so that's a good resource. I would not suggest putting your devices in Spanish until you get up to a higher level, although it's a good way to learn. But it can get annoying, especially if you have apps that will automatically translate into the Spanish language, and sometimes it can be frustrating if you don't have the vocabulary. Okay, I would also suggest listening to podcasts or Audible books, or audio books. Not necessarily on Audible, but I have Audible and I listen to books in Spanish and other languages as well. And you can also listen to books that have lessons in it, in Spanish. I have some. I'm not a huge fan of the lesson books because it's like they just go over like a word and then they say it twice in Spanish. You can kind of pick up some stuff doing that, especially if you do it over and over again, but you're not going to really become conversational if just by doing that. You have to kind of incorporate other ways of learning in order to become conversational. Okay? And my suggestion is to have a conversation, with somebody that's a native Spanish speaker. And there in Ohio where I'm at, there are plenty of people. There's a huge community of Spanish speakers in Ohio, and where I live, there used to not be as many Spanish speakers, but now there's a lot. And so um, you can definitely find places where you can have a conversation with somebody who's a native in Spanish. And if not, you know, click on contact us at Elemental Codes, and my friend Anna, who's from Guatemala, will be glad to have a conversation with you. She's a very nice person, and her husband's from Brazil, so he speaks Portuguese, so he can also help you with Portuguese if you need to. And they just had a baby. They're awesome people, and hopefully we'll see her on some videos. She does try to get some videos done right now. She's taking care of her baby, so she doesn't really have a whole lot of time, but we're hoping to get this up and growing so that we can do this full time, and then we can add more and more content to help you learn. That's my goal. I actually have some ideas that I started writing down for this, for the website and for the YouTube channel and for the Rumble channel, just to try to get more and more content. I haven't been able to work on it during the summer and the spring because I have a landscaping company and I kind of have to focus on that during those times. Those are my really busy seasons. But winter is not as busy if it doesn't snow, which it's already snowed 2 days ago. But it wasn't that bad. It didn't collect on the asphalt or anything or the sidewalks that much. So it's been okay. But I would I'm coming up with a planner, and I'm gonna do a polyglot planner, and it's gonna have it to where you can block out time to study every day. So you kind of block out the time. And for me, I like to block out time if I can. However, my schedule is not always consistent. It's very chaotic and sporadic most of the time right now, because I don't have a regular job. I have landscaping, which in the wintertime is, you know, based on whether it snows or not. And then I also work doing other things as a second job to kind of bring in income during this time when it's slow landscaping wise. And so my schedule's all jacked up most of the time. But set a time, study, set a time, set aside time to study every day, and even create your own quizzes. This is something I learned from a teacher, is that you pick what you want to learn. Like, you pick the phrases that are really important to your conversation that you're wanting to have, and you will write the English on one side, and then you'll give yourself a quiz. And then you can do the same with like the Spanish, write the Spanish on one side, and then you have to, like, wait a few minutes or wait a half an hour or whatever, and then give yourself the quiz and see if you actually know the material. If you know it, you're going to come up with it immediately. If you don't really know the material, then this is a good way to learn it as well. So this is something I learned from one of my Spanish teachers at a higher level. Since he knew that we were already committed to learning, he would let us create our own quizzes with the words that we wanted to learn, and then we'd have to write it in English at the beginning of class, and then at the end of the class we would take the quiz and we'd have to write the Spanish. And you know it was a good way to learn, because you're learning what you want to learn. You're learning what you need to learn. So that's definitely a good thing to do. Flashcards are helpful. I've got pre-made flashcards. I've got electronic digital flashcards, Anki Droid. I've got stuff like that. So it is good, especially with the digital ones. You can a lot of times get ones that have the pronunciation of it, and so that can be useful. They have flashcards online that you'd have to get on a website. Can't remember the website's name, but I have that for Hebrew. They want you to purchase it, and so you can only do so much right off the bat for free. But if you purchase it, you can do a lot more. You can take quizzes and stuff like that. I'll have to find out what that is. I forget what it is, but I'll find out what it is, and I will make it. I'll make a note in the tips for practicing. Okay. Make friends on social media so you can practice. Teaching someone who wants to learn, if your native language is English, teaching them English and having them teach you Spanish. This can work. It's kind of difficult because sometimes people only want to practice the language that they're learning rather than help you learn their native language. But you can kind of set up, guidelines and say, like, like every Tuesday we can practice Spanish. Every Thursday we can practice English. Kind of stuff like that. You can also join Facebook groups, and we also, Elemental Codes has WhatsApp groups. They're free. You can go in and you can practice the language. The main rule is that you are to you can post audio files, or you can post text or whatever, or even photos of stuff that you're learning. But it has to be in the target language, so you have to kind of there are exceptions to, like, if you're explaining something, but for the most part, the target language should be spoken in those groups. And so we have, I believe, a link to that on our website. I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure that we do. If not, you can always contact us through our website, which is at the beginning of this, and we will add you to the groups by adding your number, if you have your number, okay? If you have WhatsApp. All right, but we have a Facebook group, and we haven't really been working on it that much, but we do have content on it. A lot of this stuff we're going to try to work more to add more and more content. It's just that we have full-time commitments, jobs, families, some of us multiple jobs, so it's really difficult. Subscribe to YouTube channels. This is also something that we're working on, which I'm working on right now. So we're going to try to have more and more content, and then the other thing is getting books in Spanish on topics that you love to learn or that you need to learn, not necessarily love to learn. I mean, just from going to college, I have a book on, let's see if you can see it, Curso de Gramática Avanzada del Español, which is a grammar book, which is as much fun as you can have reading grammar. It's all in Spanish. Grammar is important. It kind of explains it, but for me personally, I don't mind studying grammar just because I look at while I'm reading, I look at words that maybe I don't know, or look at the structure of the sentences, that stand out to me that I need to work on remembering or whatever. I look for stuff that is key to learning the language more. So the whole book is in Spanish. I can understand the whole book. It's just like I look for stuff that I need to work on, stuff that I maybe have forgotten, stuff that I you know hasn't really clicked yet, and I just focus on reading through it and studying it. I also read other books in Spanish as well. It's books that I like to learn. Um, so one of the books that I probably use the most is the Bible because it is translated into a ton of different languages. And for the most part, I think a lot of the versions I have are without error for the most part, but the only issue with that is that it only gives you the vocabulary of uh, like theology of the Bible of Christianity in that case. So I do have other books in Spanish. Definitely have a lot back here that I'm planning on going through, and but you can always get books in Spanish on topics that you like to learn. I got one in about the anatomy of the human body, and I'm going to do a medical um, video as well over certain aspects of the that people would need to learn for medical interpreting or whatnot. Just so you can practice, not endorsing anything, obviously, but just so people can practice because there's not really a whole lot out there that's definitely free. Not a whole lot out there that doesn't require you to pay money, and it's not set up very well for the most part. Like you Google stuff and you can hardly find anything that you're looking for. You find all this other stuff that's not really what you're looking for, but But I would recommend getting books in Spanish, and audio books are definitely a good plus. And let's see, and then just enjoy the process. So don't get upset, don't get worried, don't get annoyed if you can't remember something. You're gonna forget stuff. You're gonna forget it a couple times. You're gonna forget it a lot. And then as you progress in the Spanish language and you're not using certain terminology, you'll forget it. You'll totally forget it. Trust me. I used to do medical interpreting, and I've forgotten. It's been let's see, 2000. It's been over 10 years since I've done medical interpreting. I used to do interpreting for a company, and I also would volunteer at the free clinic, and all I would do is like study, and I would shadow interpreters and stuff like that, and I would like just study the whole time. This was when I was in college for Spanish classes, so all my classes were in Spanish. I also worked at a landscaping company, so everybody I worked with spoke Spanish, so I was immersed in the Spanish. And then I started my own company. I haven't had that many people working for me that speak Spanish because I don't have really any employees except for right now I have my son. But I've been trying to work on building up, like getting equipment and stuff like that. And so all my money's tied up in that until I get that paid off and it stops breaking down. I'm not going to be able to hire anyone unless I could potentially sell more jobs, but then you have to find the right employees, and it's just a process. It's a process, and I want to do it correctly. Um, and it's not something I want to do for the rest of my life. I actually love languages, and I'm gonna start working on videos as much as I can to kind of, document the journey that I've been on. Obviously I can speak Spanish. I can understand Portuguese because I can speak Spanish. I can understand written more than necessarily spoken. Although I've studied Portuguese as well, so I can understand a lot of the spoken Portuguese, specifically Brazilian. But my goal is to become fluent, and I'm gonna do like comparative videos on apps because apps are also a good way to learn, but they're also not a good way to learn. It depends on the app. And so I'm going to do a comparison between certain apps. And there's one I don't particularly like. I don't even want to download it again because there's good qualities about it, but I just, it would frustrate me. So I may do something with that app, but I don't know. It's I'll let you guess who it is, because it is its icon is an owl. I'm not a big fan of it. But I don't know. It could have changed since I've last downloaded it. I'll have to take another look at it. I'll look at a language that I haven't learned yet, but I have goals, and my goal is to learn as many languages as I can with the rest of the time that I have on this earth. So I enjoy it. I love learning about new cultures, and so I'm going to do a little critique of certain books and stuff like that as well. But these are all things that you can do to enjoy the process, and you can teach what you know, which will also help you to learn it. If you teach what you know, even if you're wrong, you can always go back and you can say, I was wrong, I made a mistake or whatever. You're gonna make a mistake. There's nobody. The only people that pretend to be perfect are the ones that are trolls on the internet, and who cares about those people, right? So just enjoy it, learn, enjoy the learning, because if you're not enjoying it, you're not gonna want to learn it, and you have to have a strong enough why to kind of like learn. So. Uh, Hopefully that helps. But I will break this down into smaller sections so that it's not so long. And I thank you for joining me. My name is Joseph, and this is Elemental Codes Language School. Check us out, www.elementalcodes.com. All right, see you in the next video. Hasta luego.